Now, in the last video, we talk about things that you can do to get back on track or avoid falling off track and thriving in the Summit platform as far as focusing on projects, because they are the most impactful things on your grade. They can count for 70 to 80% of your grade. Same thing with math units. But content assessments matter too, especially since they do serve as the backdrop to help support the work that you're doing on the project. So sometimes if you don't really know what you're doing or you don't know anything about it, it's hard to do a really good job on the project and to showcase your skills. Now, they do count a lot less than projects, but they can be helpful because with about 20% of your grade coming from them, that's about 2 letter grades. So it can help improve your grade. Now, each power focus area and each content assessment um, has little impact on the overall grade, but the overall percentage can still account for about 20% of your grade. And actually, as more and more of the year goes by, and that 20% includes more and more tests, each assessment is worth less and less of the total. So as they become more and more become due. But it still matters that you try not to fall behind. Okay. Now, the content overall, right, of each content assessment doesn't count very high, like we just said. But to make up for it, the bar to pass these content assessments is high, right? Because even though they're only about 20% of the overall grade, you need about 8 correct in order to actually pass. Not about, exactly 8 or more correct to pass the test. So you do have to study hard. But the good news is that once you actually pass it, you get full credit for it, right? So you get 100% of the value of that assessment, even if you didn't get 10 out of 10 on it. So 10 out of 10 is just for glory. We should, shoot for that, but all you need is to actually pass. Now, when you're actually behind on work power focus areas, you should work on it if you are behind. But you should probably focus on the ones that you are most likely to pass first so that you catch up. Or if you have a subject that you are most close to being on track, sometimes it's motivating to get that one on track and then feel better about yourself. But there's also other considerations, like for example, sometimes you might want to work on the subject that you're performing the poorest so you don't keep doing worse and worse and neglecting it. I strongly recommend that you work with your mentor or your teachers to help you decide what focus area to work on next if you're not sure, when you are behind. I do like to point out that there is no rule, though, that you must pass them in order. So if you are struggling with a particular focus area, you can always change the order in which you take them. Now, each focus area does line up with projects. When you go over a project, you can see the focus areas that align with it. But sometimes it's more important to make sure you're making progress than trying to do that. So I like to encourage students which are stuck that they can even leave one for all the way to the end of the year if they have to, and focus on the ones which are their strongest ones. So it is smart to work on focus areas that are related to projects, but it's not smart to do that and be stuck on one forever. To find focus areas which are easier, you can actually use the diagnostic or the list of key terms or the actually objectives. So when you actually go to a project and you click on a focus area within it and you're trying to figure out what can I do? Is this an easy one? Should I do this one first? The key is to take that diagnostic. And if that diagnostic comes back high, that tells you, well, yeah, that could be it. And if I read over the descriptions and I know the key terms and I know about these objectives, this could be a good focus area if I'm losing for something easier. Sometimes, by the way, doing an additional might make more sense than trying to do a focus area as far as trying to get back on track or making your grade become higher. Here, for example, the student already has full credit for his focus areas on science. So doing another focus area is not going to help. Well, it helps to be ahead, but it doesn't make their grade go higher. If they do an additional, though, that will bring them to a C. So sometimes it matters to do an additional instead. Although I would still prioritize working harder on projects over trying to do that. The power focus areas do count against you when the line passes it, but the additionals counting when the line hits them. So that's a very important distinction that was added to the platform in 2020. So this power focus area doesn't count yet because the line hits it, but it counts once the line leaves it, right? Overtakes it. But the additional, this one is already counting because the additionals count as soon as the line hits us. So that's an important distinction. Now, as I just mentioned, if you already have 100% in a category, doing an additional focus area isn't going to help improve your grade. Having said that, it is smart to be working ahead of the line if you can. Now, of course, I wouldn't freak out about being ahead of the line, if I can't keep up with it, if I can barely keep up with it. But when you are ahead of the line, you avoid a situation where you're going to see the line pass and your grade dropping. Your grade would never drop if you're always staying ahead of the line. Now, it's also a good idea because if you start working ahead and you actually get to a point where you finish the content ahead of the game, you could theoretically start the next year earlier. And the advantage of doing that is that when you go next year, you're already going to be more prepared. You can actually accelerate to the point that you can skip a year. But more importantly, if you can actually make your next year easier. Now, very few students can do that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't push myself to do that and go overboard. Now, also note that while challenge focus areas do not count for your overall grade, they can help you understand things better. So you could choose to challenge yourself on them, but do it only if you can. Do not worry about them unless you have everything else that's going on in your life under control. And again, your mentor can help you strategize to make sure that you do a good job. So with that in mind, like I did with the power focus areas, I'm going to give you a few key pieces of advice on how to do the best you can in content assessment. So let's go. Once again, these strategies are part of a document that says secrets to improve your grade in the Summit platform, and the link to that is in the description of the video down below. First of all, try to not fall behind or stay ahead of the line. And to do so, you have to try to pass one content area a week or two content areas or three content areas every 2 weeks. If you do it that way, you will always make sure that you're above the line. If you're trying to stay above the line while doing additionals, you definitely have to try to do about 2 per week. So it all depends on how long your school year is, by the way. So do check with your teacher on that. Prioritize content areas which are associated with projects that you are working on, because that will also help your projects do better, and projects are worth more. So that's just smart. Prioritize subjects that will become overdue next. So when you're looking at the year page, right? So if I was looking at this case right here, that is the next focus area that seems it's going to be rolling over. So I'm going to work on that first, and then maybe the math one. So, right? So think about the working on the subject who's going to roll over next. Now, if you are frustrated and you are very overwhelmed and you are very behind, I strongly advise to do the easiest things first. And remember to use things like the key terms or objective list in order to help you make sure that you are picking something easy, or take the diagnostic test to help identify that. On the other hand, if you are confident, doing the most challenging things first can help them get them out of the way, and then that can give you a boost of confidence even more, and then make things easier after that. Now, if you are looking for something that is easier, don't forget to use the diagnostic test, objective list, or key terms to help identify that. Try to avoid try not to avoid a subject too much. Okay, so if you have a subject that you particularly don't like or that you struggle with, take at least one power focus area for that subject for every 2 that you take on a subject that is easy for you, right? So that means that you don't forget about a subject completely. That could be a recipe for disaster by the end of the year. Okay. Another thing that's interesting is that when you are studying for focus areas, there's a lot of different types of resources within them. All right. So if you go inside of an actual power focus area, you're going to see that for any given objective, you might have study guides, you might have a vocabulary list, you might have presentations and videos and checks for understanding and notes and slideshows. What do I look at? Well, here's what I would do if I'm trying to be better. What I would do is I would actually keep a journal and keep track of which type of resource I used, and if it made it easy for me to pass the test or not. If it took too long, if it was too time consuming, that's a no too. If you got too distracted or frustrated or overwhelmed when you were using that resource, all of those are reasons to avoid it in the future. You want to pick something that you get excited about using. You want to pick something that makes you much more likely to engage and actually do well afterwards. So if your notes show you that resource didn't work, then you probably don't. So like for each topic, keep a list, and I have resources for that as my mentor group. Keep a list of what you've done and then what happened. And that will help you identify, should I do the same thing next time, or should I try something different? Likewise, when it comes to study strategies, right? Whether it's like, okay, I'm going to attend a workshop to learn this stuff, or I'm going to quiz myself using flashcards or study lists, or I'm going to study with a friend or something else. Whatever strategy you use to actually get the material in your head once you have the notes, also keep track of that. And then, like I just told you before, avoid using the same strategies that made you frustrated, that took too long, that got you to be distracted or overwhelmed. And that includes working with a friend that was counterproductive. Taking notes or studying with someone that makes you waste time, not a good idea. So keep track of that. And then you get better and better as you start going through the year. Lastly, the same kind of idea applies to strategies that you do while taking the exam, right? So when you're taking the exam, make sure that you avoid doing things that don't help you and try to use new strategies if you're stuck. And I have a whole video and resource on that as well to help you do better every time you take the exam. Another one that's important is to actually make sure you're ready before taking it. All right. So then you don't want to take the test 6 times. You want to use the best resources for you, study with the best strategies, and take the best test taking strategies and get better at that as time goes by. The secret to make sure that you're ready, by the way, is have really good notes that actually include all the key terms and that describe each objective with at least 4 or 5 facts for each objective. So if you go to the focus area and you look at the top right-hand corner, all of these key terms need to be defined. And each of these objectives, I need 4 to 5 facts about each of them. That will help me make sure that I know it. But now having that in my notes is one thing. Then I have to have that in my head. I need to be able to teach it to somebody else, whether it's talking to myself in a mirror or talking to a friend. I need to know that I know, or rewriting it so that from memory, so that you know that you can do it. These are different strategies again to study to make sure that you are ready before you actually take the exam. And then when you're taking the exam, using those key test strategies, being relaxed, taking deep breaths. I have a whole video about that. And then finally, make goals. When you are making goals, like for example, I want to try to pass the test by Friday, break that large goal into smaller chunks. I have a video about that it's called setting goals, and I had another one that I talk about it when I go over the week page. If you watch this series, for which this video is part of, I talk about that, breaking down that goal into like, okay, first I'm going to study for objective 1, then objective 2, then objective 3, and then I'm going to use this strategy to review, and then that strategy to review, and then I'm going to try to take the test, and then I'm saying, break it down and have a goal for each day between now and the day that you actually want to try to pass it. And since you have to try to do that once per week, what I teach my students to do is actually spread out the week and do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What am I going to do Monday? What am I going to do Tuesday? And set it up so that by the end of the week, you are ready to take that test. All right? And so that is, my friends, great strategies on how to do well in content assessments and avoid falling behind. Now, remember, content assessments are only worth a minority of the overall grade that a student gets. And so you still should focus more on power focus areas. But if you are close to a next letter grade and you're missing a power focus area, or if you are your additionals are missing, they can sometimes be what you need to bring your grade higher. And of course, if you're off track because you're behind on power focus areas, this video included a lot of strategies that can help you do that. I'm going to do one more video on this topic when I'm going to review the different ways in which Summit System helps you get back on track and some of the things you can do to get the help you need to do that. So I'll see you in that video.